Nick McBride, member for Mackillop. Great to have you with us on Flow today.
Oh, always a pleasure, Ricky.
Now, you've had this vote in the Parliament. I know the Labor Party at South Australia have tried to make a bit of mischief about it, but you've crossed the floor to vote against the government on this vote about emergency powers moved by your colleague Troy Bell. Can you give us some background of what that vote was about and why you voted the way you did?
There's a couple of reasons. The amendment to the COVID Act, that's all it was, an amendment that the member for Mount Gambier moved through, was well worded. It was put in a way that was very respectful of everything that's gone on, and it really just asked that this COVID emergency legislation that rolls out and gives the powers to the police commissioner and Nicola Spiria and SA Health experts, the powers to lock our state down and protect our borders. The request by the legislation that my government was trying to put through the Parliament was taking it right out to April 2022. And look, Troy, member for Mount Gambier, thought it would be a lot more pertinent that it be reviewed on the 1st of December and it can roll out to April after that or a future date beyond. What's interesting about this amendment and looking around what's happening around the country at the moment is New South Wales is under a lot of pressure. They're getting a lot of vaccine out there, and we believe by September sort of period, late September, early October, that they could see restrictions starting to ease, and there's messaging there that they think that all students will be back at school in a staggered method, and these sort of restrictions will be starting to ease. So then the question is, what will South Australia be at? What sort of vaccine rate will South Australia have as out there in vaccinations? And will we be able to consider some of these same options? And then the question then is asked, will we still require this COVID Emergency Act to continue to roll on? And so that's why I supported this bill. I supported that amendment. And then the other part of this amendment was representation on the Transition Committee. As we come out of this, out of these restrictions, as we go into some of these restrictions, we've not seen good representation in Adelaide for the regions. There's been no one there advocating and batting for us. And as you would know, Ricky, and your Mount Gambier listeners and country regional listeners would know, that the cross-border community has been, well, first of all, done it very, very well in looking out for our state, not have been tested once, some of the most tested community members in Australia, and they haven't let us down. But it's also been really, really hard on them and tough. And we've felt that. That's also myself as a member for Mackillop and my Narra Court office, as well as so has Troy Bell in Mount Gambier, and so have the other MPs up and down both sides of the border. So look, this is why we're looking for better rollout of these restrictions, hopefully better representation, and we do get someone regionally based to actually advocate for us.
Now, just on that point, there's been this backflip, I think it's fair to say, with the requirement that Victorians will need to have a vaccination by the 24th of September to be able to come into the state. But overnight, SA Police have said, no, we're changing that direction. That will no longer be required. Isn't that an illustration of the lack of consideration of cross-border community members?
Oh, look, first of all, when it was first rolled out, Ricky, and then they've obviously rolled out that everyone required this vaccine by the 24th of September, I thought that was very onerous and plus maybe even too difficult to actually fulfil with the way that a lot of bookings for people are in October and they couldn't get the booking or the jab before the 24th of September. And not only that, I think the basic right of Australians and of whether they needed to have this vaccine or shouldn't be want to have that vaccine was taken away from them. So I think that's a push probably too far. It's interesting that they backed down for the cross-border community. The cross-border community at this stage is not being compelled, and it's not compulsory for them to be vaccinated by the 24th of September. The wording is there, Ricky, that they should be prepared that could be the case in the future. Those that are looking to try and get across this border from further beyond the cross-border and cross-border community, that is in place. This is what they're trying to roll out, and it's going to be interesting to see who's willing to participate, who can't and won't. And then how they work through that. And that's a gambit of cross-border, let's say, exceptional travellers and the like, be it in work and in health and all those sorts of things, whether they'll actually participate or whether they say, no, I can't be bothered with this anymore, we'll give up and we'll do something different. And that could have all sorts of consequences, everything from school teachers to nurses to doctors and also heavy transport operators.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that in a moment, but just on the subject of the amendment, did that pass the other amendment you voted with, Troy Bell's amendment regarding having representation on the Transition Committee from regional areas?
So the amendment passed our lower house on that night around 7:45 after dinner, but it was then to be taken on through to the upper house, which the government indicated they were in sort of a hurry to do so, but it was never shown, never raised in the upper house the next day. So that's interesting to see where that's gone and what do they do? What is our government doing with it? So I haven't heard. They haven't told me what the plan is for it now.
So the emergency powers, they're sort of in limbo at this point in time because of the amendments?
No, because this COVID Emergency Act wasn't due to pick up the expiry of the last one until around the 17th of September. So 17th of September this month is when the COVID Emergency Act expires, and it needs to be reviewed and rolled out for another period, and that's still got another, obviously, 17 days up, so we've got another sitting week before then.
I see. Now, you just mentioned heavy vehicles, transport, etc. I understand that, talking with Emma Keeley, your coalition colleague across the border, if you like, from Victoria, State MP there, says the truckies had to turn around at the border and go back to Horsham and get a COVID test before they could cross the border under new arrangements. Were you involved in some advocacy about sorting that situation out?
We've certainly been trying to help them and get clarity, and they also then just raised the issue with that rollout. This is just typical, Ricky, of these sort of decisions being made in Adelaide and without the awareness and consequences of capturing people, asking people to adhere to it. So we're hearing that Victorian drivers, maybe South Australian, maybe other interstate drivers coming from Victoria anyway, into South Australia, having to dump their trailers, unhitch, go back into a town, go and get tested, and then actually having to sit back and wait for the result before they can come into South Australia. Now, the point that's a bit frustrating there, Ricky, is it's not so much that they're trying to put good rules and safeguards in place, it's just the communication hasn't worked to allow those truckies to get tested before they got to the border, so they didn't have to lose time and go off and now wait out until they have a negative test.
Yeah.
And this is what's really, really missing in these sorts of actions.
Yeah, and that's going to muck some people around with freight, I suspect. But Emma Keeley, the member for Lowen across the border, says now they've got a sign up warning people, a bit like last petrol for 100 kilometres. This one says last testing station before the border at Horsham.
Yes, look, I should imagine that sort of notation that's gone out, but that could have been done a whole lot better by, obviously informing and communicating these sort of new rules out and amongst the industry, out amongst the regions, making sure they're all geared up so that we can meet this criteria and everyone can participate in a normal and easy fashion. But no, as you know, Ricky, there's been a lot of hiccups along the way. Sometimes it's always the hard way is found rather than the easy way, and it can be very, very frustrating for those that are having to navigate this.
Well, Nick McBride, member for Mackillop, thanks for chatting with us about that, being generous with your time, and we'll catch you again soon.
Always a pleasure. Thanks very much, Ricky.